Collecting ingredients is the first step when putting a dish together. It's a step I used to omit, preferring to get started. Now, I use the time I'm collecting ingredients to collect myself, too. It's practical to have everything you need on the counter before you begin cooking. If something's missing, you'll notice right away. Gathering also allows time to take your culinary pulse. Do you really feel like making this dish? It's good for me, and for the food I'm cooking, to have a certain enthusiasm for the project, even if it's something I've made before. If the enthusiasm isn't there, why bother? From my perspective, cooking food isn't some dull chore that's fallen into my lap. It's part of a much larger picture. It's one of the ways I relate to myself, my family, and the world. It's part of a choice I make every day about the way I take care of things. No one forces me to eat what I eat or cook what I cook. The choice is mine. Every time I set ingredients on the counter to prepare a dish, I make that choice again. It may seem mysterious that the same recipe, prepared by 3 individuals, comes out tasting 3 different ways. But that's the nature of individuals, and we've all experienced it. With this in mind, the following are some factors often responsible for major differences in cooking results. Never assume that your oven bakes at the temperature set on the dial. Purchase an oven thermometer and test it. A difference of 25 degrees, a significant difference, is common. Do you measure dry ingredients accurately, leveling off the measuring cup with the back of a knife? Or do you prefer to eyeball it, as I often do? There's nothing wrong with using your inborn measuring skills if they're sharp, and if you don't mind some variation in results. Accurate measurement is most crucial when baking cakes, so take special care, especially the first time you use a recipe. Selecting the proper pan for baking a cake or quick bread is essential to a recipe's success. Still, this crucial detail is often overlooked, even in many otherwise good cookbooks. A pan size is significant because of the effect it has on baking time. For example, a cake baked in an 8-inch square pan has a surface area of 64 square inches. If it were baked instead in a 7x11 pan, the cake would have 77 square inches of surface area. It would be thinner, and it would dry out or burn if baked the length of time given for the 8x8-inch pan. Similarly, a quick bread designed to fill a 9x5-inch pan would be thicker if it were baked in an 8x4.5-inch pan. It would need more time to bake. A pan's material is also important. I prefer baking in shiny stainless steel because the shine reflects heat from the sides of the pan, keeping the edges of cakes and cookies from becoming dark and overdone. Black pans, on the other hand, attract heat and are perfect for baking crusty breads. Glass pans transmit heat quickly. If you use them, reduce the oven temperature by 25 degrees. Humidity, temperature, and barometric pressure influence us, as well as the food we cook. Paying attention to these conditions stimulates us to cook appropriately. We do this in part by instinct. When it's hot, we crave cool foods. When it's cold, we crave warmth. When it's humid, moisture in the air, we crave moisture in our bodies. Naturally, what is cooked is colored by the cook. Too obvious to mention, but too important to omit. One school of thought about nutrition tells us not to eat when we're emotionally out of balance, that ordinary foods become toxic when our body chemistry is affected by anger, sorrow, or even intense excitement. It's the same with cooking. The mood of the chef is expressed in every vegetable she chops, in every sandwich she assembles, in every crust she throws away. For this reason, we feel it when food is prepared with love and attention, and we feel it when food is thrown together in anger or despair. If it sounds like there's a message here, for me it's this: I cook when I feel like cooking. Otherwise, I like to keep our meals very simple. The best method I know to stimulate creativity in the kitchen is to keep a well-stocked pantry. Beautiful orange lentils, gnarly dried mushrooms, lacy sheets of purple nori, and myriad other colorful and textural edibles provide inspiration like food itself provides nutrition. Keeping my pantry full means I rarely buy on impulse. Better yet, I often avoid paying retail. Knowing what I'll need before I need it gives me the opportunity to buy through a neighborhood co-op and to take advantage of supermarket specials. It means that regular shopping trips are brief because they're limited to perishable items like vegetables, breads, fruits, and dairy products. The chief benefit of a well-stocked pantry is the feeling of satisfaction it brings. I can make a meal that suits the needs of a specific day, its weather, mood, and schedule, without going to the store. That makes me happy. I enjoy staying home when I'm home. In addition, I have the security of knowing there's plenty stored up for a rainy day or a hurricane. It takes some organization to set up an efficient pantry, but it's the kind of project that can make a real difference in your life. Because our kitchen is a busy, lively place, we rarely eat at restaurants. This home-centeredness is not only economical, but is fundamental to our family's togetherness. There's a strange phenomenon at play in kitchens across the country. I know because I discovered it in my own. It's really not a quirk of kitchens, it's a quirk of people. Those of us who cook always love to try something new. It adds to the enjoyment of food making, sparks our creativity, and keeps our tables interesting. At the same time, when looking through recipes and cookbooks, we tend to choose dishes that use the same old familiar ingredients. Where do we expect the newness to come from? Speaking for myself, I notice that I regard unfamiliar ingredients with a mixture of excitement and aversion. Psychologists call this an approach avoidance response. Here's an example. I'll read a recipe whose ingredients include red curry paste. The dish sounds good, but I've never tried red curry paste, and I don't know where to get it. If I'm lucky enough to find it at the store, it might sit on my shelf for half a year before I decide to make the new dish. That's approach avoidance. I know many people who buy tofu once, then let it sit and rot in their refrigerator. I didn't know what to do with it, they say later. I've done that myself. Yet one of the best things about cooking is the freedom we have to experiment. New dishes are made all the time. They are made by people who fire up their approach and set their avoidance on the back burner. No one says mistakes won't be made, but who cares? By forging fearlessly ahead, we accelerate the learning process and realize gratifying results. Those were some excerpts from Vegetarian Nights by Bonnie Mando, my mother, and we will be putting out a 30th anniversary edition later this year. Here is my introduction to that book. There is no doubt that it's easier to eat a balanced vegetarian diet when your mother is a chef and a caterer and is constantly trying out new recipes on you. There's also no doubt that I was more able to provide a similar quality of meals to my own family because she took the time to write them down. A lot has changed since 1994, but within the ever-shifting landscape of human society, between the whims and whims of health awareness and diet culture, my mother's book has been a pillar of continuity, a resource I can count on for all occasions. To this day, my daughter asks me to send her pictures of certain recipes, and I've met more than one person whose childhood menu was influenced by her cookbook. But as great as they are, it wasn't the recipes that catalyzed me to put Vegetarian Nights back into print. It was the information contained in sections like Considerations and About Rice and Other Whole Grains. In a time when many people in the United States have been completely separated from the experience of growing, farming, hunting their own food, valuable knowledge is slipping through the generational cracks. This book is a treasure trove of information about cooking and baking, the kind of information people pay tens of thousands of dollars for in cooking schools. And here is what she says about rice and the other whole grains. Perhaps this chapter has changed more than any other chapter since Vegetarian Nights was first published in 1994. At that time, most of the vegetarians I knew on the island of Maui, where I'd lived much of my life, were what I'd call the basic, eating no flesh equals being a vegetarian variety. At least that's how I perceived myself and my family. Sure, we'd heard about veganism, lacto-ovo-vegetarianism, pescatarianism, and more, but those latter modes became more mainstream in the 1990s and into the 21st century. By then, there was also more information available about how the basic version had worked for those who had followed that path for decades. At that time, there was a much larger community of people who had become stricter vegetarians, as well as a sizable group who had become more liberal, and were practicing what we might call part-time vegetarianism. the connection between what we ate and how well we aged was becoming clearer and clearer. Along with these changes, there is now a gluten-free crowd, a sizable and still growing group who've given up gluten-containing foods, which primarily include breads and other baked goods containing wheat, as well as other gluten-containing grains like barley and rye. It's difficult to imagine how deeply a major change of diet like these, and the many others now popular, can affect a person's lifestyle. Paired with increasing scientific data concerning inflammation, gut health, alternative diets, and therapies, much of the good old food pyramid nutritional model has been put to rest. This book is not intended to verify or vilify any eating style, only to present the results of my own experiments as I've come and gone through the daunting and spectacular challenges of so-called middle age. I find it surprising how much enjoyment I find in this current, latter part of the journey, dietary changes and all, and this is why I'm so pleased to be sharing these recipes and reflections. If you've enjoyed these excerpts, thank you for staying around for longer than 10 minutes. This app really wants me to make long-form videos, so I'm giving it a go. I will be doing more reading and recipes in the coming future, and I will definitely let you know about the availability of this book as soon as it's out. Now let's test ourselves some granola, what do you say? She's ready for her portion of it, but I get to eat first. No, you don't get that until Daddy's done. Yeah. Sorry, it just do be like that. Incidentally, this recipe is my own, although there is one in her book. And I have altered what I showed at the beginning of this video heavily. I ran out of honey, so I added apple butter. I added a half cup instead of a third cup of oil. And I used raisins instead of craisins. I have a rap about that, but I thought that might be a little bit too much. There's a faint hint of an apple aroma. It's less sweet than it typically is when you use just honey. I could have cooked it for another minute or two, but it's good. It's good. But does everybody like it? There's one more person waiting to be fed. This is the Catmando here. Miss Lightning, what do you think? She will drink some non-dairy milks every once in a while. Today, not so much. Sorry, kitty. That's it, Miss Press.